Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the third and final installment of the Friends of South Carolina Libraries Virtual Visit with Friends. Today's topic of conversation is adventures in virtual programming, and we've got a few people on here who have already done some virtual programming, not only because of the COVID-19, but also with their respective organizations. So we'll have some discussion and conversation about what works, what doesn't work, maybe what to try. So thank you everybody for joining us. I do appreciate it. My name is Marlena White. I am the current president of the Friends of South Carolina Libraries. We have a small group with us today, so I'd like to go ahead around the room and if you will introduce yourself and let us know what library you were with. Jonathan, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Sure, I'm Jonathan Haupt. I'm the director of the nonprofit Pat Conroy Literary Center here in Beaufort, and I'm a member of our local Friends of the Beaufort Library and also a board member of Fossil.
Thank you so much. Libby?
I'm Libby Law. I am treasurer of Friends of South Carolina Libraries. I'm a member of the Richland Library Friends in Columbia, and retired from working at the State Library.
And also you keep us on track at Fossil, so thank you. Donna, you want to say hello? Donna, you're on mute.
Sorry. I'm Donna Lolis. I am a library development consultant with the South Carolina State Library, and I am also the State Library's liaison to Fossil.
Well, thank you so much. Grant, you want to say hello?
Hello, I'm Grant Jackson. I am president of the Friends of the Irmo Branch Library, which is Lexington, South Carolina.
Thank you so much. Amber?
Hi, everyone. I'm Amber Conger. I'm Deputy Director of the Lexington County Library.
Thank you. Tina? Hello, Tina. All right, everybody. I don't know if you're seeing the chat, but Tina is saying hello from the South Congaree Pine Ridge Branch Library. So hello, Tina. That's no problem. You're welcome to type into the chat any information you would like to share. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Before we started the recording, I had mentioned that Jonathan Haupt was kind enough to provide some really great information on virtual backgrounds and also lighting for virtual events. So I'm going to go ahead and put those links that he sent into the chat in case anyone is interested in copying them and checking out that information for yourself. Well, wonderful. Grant, I'm going to go ahead and let you get started. If you'll tell the group about your virtual program that you had over the weekend, perhaps a little background on how you initially used to host the event, how it had to change and adapt, and how the event went as a whole.
Certainly. Thank you, Marlena. Excuse me. What Marlena is referring to is we staged our first virtual murder mystery theater event over the weekend. We did 2 performances, Friday and Saturday night. The Friends of the Irmo Branch Library Virtual Murder Mystery Dinner Theater presentation, dinner show, has been a staple of our fundraising, one of our main fundraisers for about the last 6 years. Ordinarily done live at Saluda Shoals Park at the River Center, a tremendous evening of eating, drinking, and a stage performance, basically an audience participation murder mystery presentation where the audience helps solve the crime. They get to question the suspect. Of course, we had it scheduled back in July. Everybody know what happened. We pushed it off to October. We knew that wasn't going to happen. It's now scheduled. The next live one's scheduled for July of next year, and hopefully we'll get there. But what happened is we have a service that we generally have bought. I say they're plays, and they are plays, but they're actually mystery dinner games, if you will, where you invite 6 or 8 of your friends to dinner and pass out scripts and have a murder mystery dinner game. There's an organization, there are several organizations that do these, but there's one called Red Herring Games in England that we had bought several scripts from, games or scripts. As things happened with the pandemic, they began to do some of these virtual murder mystery presentations. And my wife and I watched a couple of them and looked at ourselves after the second one and said, we can do that better. And so decided that we would simply reach out to our actors. We have a small group of actors. I call them our murder mystery troupe. They're the same people that come back. Kelly Poole at the Lexington, Maine has been one of our performers to gauge their interest in doing it. And they decided, yes, that they would like to give it a try. So we put together a virtual murder mystery dinner presentation. We ran it through a Zoom webinar. We were fortunate in that there are other people doing this. We didn't have to invent the wheel, so to speak. We just had to kind of grab onto the wheel. There's an organization called Pioneer Drama, which is another company that we bought scripts from in the past, and they're doing some of these, and they put out a little marvelous guide to how to do a virtual theater, a guide to how to do virtual theater. And so we were able to take that and just kind of follow the steps, which was really good because there was a lot of things in there that I was not aware of. I now know more about Zoom webinar than I ever thought I would ever want to know. But I said we had a marvelous fun with it. We did about six rehearsals before the 2 presentations over the weekend. The way the Zoom webinar worked, if you know about that, you can ask people to register and ask people to pay to attend. And so we ran all our registration through Zoom webinar connected to our PayPal account. So when Marlena, for example, decided she wanted to attend, she registered, it took her to PayPal, either use PayPal or credit card to pay, you get the money. She gets the link to the show. The one thing we tried to stress for the show, and one thing about virtual program, is that when you send out a link, it's a link to a screen. And so I don't know how many people, Marlena, how many people did you have around your screen for $15?
There were 2 of us, and that's
okay, it's just 2, but I know there were some that had, a small party, had a small dinner party with close friends, and for $15.
What wording did you use to try to emphasize that?
We tried to emphasize it in the publicity, but frankly, and some of the lessons learned as we got into this, you do need a team to pull it off, and we didn't have as many people involved. In my capacity and what I've done in my career in the past is I'm a journalist. I was a writer. I'm still a writer. I do some public relations. So I have been to handle the public relations for the performance. Well, I was also the director and the producer of in a very different environment this year. And so a lot of stuff that we would like to have done didn't get done as well in terms of publicity. Not to say we didn't make any money. We did. We made about cleared about $1,000 from the 2 performances, which is fine. We would like to have had more, but as my wife and others are pointing out, that's $1,000 we didn't have in the treasury before. And, given that no book sales, none of that has gone on this year, it significantly helps us with some of our expenses moving forward. So, and we are looking at maybe doing something else even before next July, maybe exploring a children's type presentation play of some kind with a very small cast over the holidays, perhaps. Something that we could, charge a very nominal fee and maybe $5. And family could have their children gather around a Zoom webinar and see the performance. It could be anything from a performance that we bought. Pioneer Drama, as I mentioned, does a lot of plays for school-age children. And so we could look and see what they have, and they're usually very nominal costs. Our cost to put the play on, less than $200. It was very expensive because what we really always had was the biggest cost was the Zoom webinar subscription, which we do it on a month-to-month basis. I'm going to cancel it later today because we don't need the webinar anymore. We just need the $15 a month Zoom, but the webinar is like $40 a month. So, Zoom and webinar, that's $55. So that was $100. And the cost of the play was really nominal. The Red Herring Games people are great. They said, well, here's what we're going to do. All you have to do is, if you don't do it more than 3 times, we won't make you buy a commercial license. All you have to do is buy the play 3 times. Or, well, we bought the play twice. It was $30 a piece, roughly, each time. So $60 there. So our cost really came in, next to nothing to put the show on, about $180 to do the whole show. So most of our income was pure profit. So it was a wonderful experience. You talked about backgrounds, and as I said earlier, the background behind me is the background from the performance. This is Dexter Rincey's library, where we had all our actors perform, and they interacted quite well in a gallery setting like this. It was they did some amazing things. Quite frankly, we're very, very fortunate that we have a group of very talented people that work with us on these performances. Some of them are extremely well-known stage actors in the local Midlands community. So that's about it. Let me, Mariah, questions? Anything particularly you want me to address?
So this is an established event that you had. You were able. Yeah. So you've had actors that were comfortable and familiar with this before. Were the actors comfortable with the virtual setting? How did they react when you suggested that they were going to simply? Now the costumes were phenomenal. I have to admit the costumes were phenomenal. But what was their comfort level?
I think they got very comfortable. I think some of them coming in, some of the actors, Kevin Bush, who played the constable, my son Jonathan, who played the barrister, the murderer, Ripley Timms, who played one of the characters, are locally accomplished stage actors, and they had done, some of them, especially Kevin, had done some virtual stuff before, so they were comfortable. Some of the other participants, some of the young women are fairly new to us. Emily Toombs, who is a library employee, by the way, working at Pittsburgh Leesville right now. This is the second or third one she's done for us, and it took her a little bit, I think, to get comfortable with the virtual end of it versus the stage performance, because the real key and the thing that our actors just did so marvelously, and I've complimented them on this, is, you know, if we're on stage together in a Zoom, I can see you, but I can't touch you. Now I can't, you know, that tactile sensation of how you perform in a space is kind of gone. But our people did, I mean, and they pulled some stuff, Marlene, they did some stuff Saturday night that they did not do Friday night that just floored me. I didn't know anything about the fainting scene where one of the women fainted, and the person who was her husband, I think, yeah, her husband actually reached out, and it looked almost like he was reaching toward her in a real space. So they did some marvelous stuff with that. It just took a little bit of getting used to it and practicing. It's rehearsal. It's all about rehearsal. You know, we set up a practice session webinar for every rehearsal. And so they were doing it in the space they were going to be in. They were interacting. They were seeing how they could react to each other. We also worked very closely with the stage manager, and that's a key individual in something like this. The stage manager is one of my other sons, who does webinars and things for the School of Public Health at USC. And so he controlled what the audience saw. And so he controlled the gallery view. When you had, you know, when we had all 8 actors engaging in dialogue, it was a gallery view, so that you saw them and they reacted to each other. They reacted, you know, with expressions and even sound to the dialogue going on. So you got to feel that they were kind of in the same place. One of the things with the virtual background, one thing I want to work with the next time we do it, is I'm trying to figure out how can I do a virtual background so that it doesn't look like every actor is sitting in the same chair. You know, we need the same room shot from 4 or 5 different angles so that people appear in the same room, but they don't appear as they are in the same chair. The best we could do is, you know, I would sit on this side of the screen and somebody else would sit on this side of the screen, and so you got some sense of spatial relationship. But yeah, the actors were phenomenal. This is a phenomenal troupe, and they love doing this for the library.
You mentioned about having everybody get together. That's something that I wanted to try to point out. Your son is not in South Carolina. So these actors, I mean, you can do an event like this where people are coming in from all different parts of the country. And
that's one of the neat things about virtual theater, as I said in my introduction to it. You know, our actors, most of us were in Columbia, but my son Jonathan, who has played on stage with us before and used to live here, he's now a professor at Florida State University. So he was performing as Regis Smallprint, the barrister, with the same background, sitting at his dining room table in Tallahassee. I pointed out in the play as well, and when we had the actors take their bow, that one of our actresses, Del Tavener, who lives here, is from Alaska. Well, her father watched the performance from Alaska. So, you know, one of the great things about virtual theater is you're not constrained. Your audience is not constrained by where they are. They don't have to travel. You know, it's just fire up the computer, click on a screen. And the other thing, as I mentioned before earlier, is that, you know, we charge $15 the registration, $15 a ticket. Okay, that's $15 for Marlena White, and she pays it. But if she wants to have a dinner party with 8 people, it's still just $15. It's a link to a screen. And one of the things, and I don't know, Marlena, if you did this, but one of our officers at the Irmo Friends, Pete Stewart, who's the treasurer, he had another couple over, and they put it up on the smart screen, on the smart TV screen. And so, you know, you're not really confined by, if you have a smart TV, you don't have to be confined by the space of a laptop screen. Chromecast it to your smart TV and you got a full presentation.
That's fantastic.
That was a lot of fun.
One key point that I wrote down that I definitely think is important for any event like this is practice. You would practice a live event if you had a speech, or if you were going to have some sort of event, you would run through, you would brainstorm, you would do all these things in advance. And it's the same thing with the virtual is you know, practice, practice, practice. Yeah,
I mean, we change things, we change dialogue. I'm not the script writer, but I'm the script rewriter for these things when we buy a game and have to put it to the stage. So I would change dialogue if something occurred or someone's suggestion, or one of the actors would suggest, hey, I need to come in after you speak and say something. So yeah, practice, 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 and fine tuning.
I included links into the chat for both Red Herring Games and Pioneer Drama. And I took a quick look at both of their websites, and they were phenomenal.
And I will say that Red Herring Games is phenomenally good to work with. I did a Zoom conference with Lisa calls her, my wife calls her my girlfriend, the young woman who's our link to Red Herring Games in England when we first decided to launch into this, just to get some ideas, some tips. And they're phenomenal. They're really easy to work with and very reasonably priced, very reasonably priced.
Jonathan, I was hoping I could ask you real fast, and Grant, you may want to speak to this as well, but how do you deal with not having audience reaction? You know, when you're having a performance, you can see maybe where the laughs are coming from, or, you know, just the reaction of the room. Jonathan, when you do a lot of events, sometimes you're simply doing it webinar style. How have you adapted to that? How has that been?
It's not easy. I'll tell you that right now, because I mean, part of the fun of doing this is the one-on-one, unexpected, impromptu interaction with a live audience, getting to read the room, getting to you know, interact with them, even if it's just their facial expressions, knowing that they're following along with where you are in the presentation. And you can do that in a situation like we are right now, a traditional Zoom meeting, where you can, you know, ideally see at least some of the folks on screen, even if it's not everybody, and you're getting some kind of feedback. But when you're in a Zoom webinar or a GoToWebinar, or those scenarios where you're just talking to yourself, right? I mean, you're just talking to yourself on screen. It's hard to gauge. What we've been trying to do in those programs is encourage people to use the chat, you know, so there's at least some manner of feedback popping up. You can see people, you know, giving feedback or asking questions or posting smiley faces or whatever it is. Thank you, Marlena. I appreciate that. Like Marlena is doing right now as a good example. That's really helpful. That gives you some kind of energy to play off of. I've done virtual tours here in the Conroy Center for, yes, that's nice too, Marlena. Thank you. For 100 people, international group, right? People from Spain, people from all over the country. And it's when I'm doing them on my iPad, which is what I'm on right now, if we're in a standard issue Zoom meeting, I get the option of seeing, you know, 3 or 4 of them across the bottom. And I just scroll through until I find really responsive people. And I just focus on them for the hour, because they're giving me something to work with. And that makes the whole program just run so much smoother. It makes it so much more enjoyable. And I don't get that. I have not really found an ideal way to do this in webinar, other than just trusting that people are reacting the way that I think they would if we were in a room together. If it's a presentation I've done multiple times, I know where people laugh, I know where I can get them to cry, you know, and I'm hoping that's what's happening, but I have no visual confirmation that it is.
Yeah, that's very true. I think that was one of the most difficult parts, is not having, you know, audience reaction to things, to dialogue. One of the things we worked with and encouraged was, in the dialogue, in the sections of the performance where there is dialogue between the 8 characters. Again, we had it in gallery view. We controlled it for the audience in gallery view, and we encouraged the actors to react. So, you know, when there's a revelation that one actor's wife is having a little hanky-panky with the murder victim, well, then he reacts, and you see that, and that helps. I think that helps. The chat is another thing. We use the chat for audience participation, where the audience, at 3 points in the play, in the performance, the audience gets to ask questions. Boyd was trying to do it, whereas, you know, in the Zoom webinar, you can change someone's status and allow them to go on camera and to interact verbally. We decided that that would be a little too tricky to try to manage. That was done. Some of the performance I watched, they did that in England, and it was difficult to manage. So we just used the chat. It's a little impersonal, but we did get some good comments from people during the show. One thing I would urge you again, and one thing I think I would do differently next time, is that not only do you need to have a stage manager, but you probably need to have a chat manager. Someone who actually handles, you know, the chat and reacts and those things, because I was trying to do that as a conduit for the audience participation questions, which was fine, but I could not react in real time to other things that were coming through on the chat from the audience.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're saying stage manager, but honestly, you could use that term for any type of event that you were looking to put on, you know, an event manager.
Oh, yeah, event manager, basically, sure.
Kind of wrangler.
Sure. Zoom wrangler.
Zoom wrangler. No, I'm taking that T-shirt, Jonathan. That one's mine.
You got
you're not,
it. That's
you're
fine.
not taking
no,
that one's mine. Okay. I'm taking that one.
I won't race you to that one. Grant, I have two questions about
Sure.
audience for you, if you don't mind. You mentioned having, you know, a audience member from Alaska because you had an actor, a participant from Alaska. Mm-hmm. Was the core of your audience the same group of people who would have attended an in-person event, or was it bigger or broader or different in some way than that?
I think the core was probably people who have attended in the past or friends, members, but there were a lot of names that we did not recognize. For example, and I'll give you one specific in addition to the Alaska one. My son and his partner, who are in Tallahassee, both professors at USC, they sent it out to a lot of their friends in Tallahassee. So many of those people who watched, not many, but a number, were from Tallahassee area. They were their friends. I recognized the name or the email address was, in a couple of cases, was the same as the church that they attend. So I recognized it from being down there in church. So yeah, you do get a little broader audience, but most of our audience, I think, was the core that we've had in the past.
So how did your audience find out about it? I mean, it sounds like the people outside of the usual circle heard by word of mouth from somebody who was on the inside, an actor or somebody associated with it. Yeah. But how did you let the core audience know that you were
We did a lot of email and social media promotion. We have a list. We sent it out to our membership list. I sent it to Marlene and Kitty. They sent it out to all the other friends groups. We have a core email list that we gather each and update each time. It's what we call our frequent flyers, those who've attended in the past. So we know who they are. We have their emails, and so we send blasts out to them. And then we did a lot of posting on Facebook and our website. And we have a woman who helps us with publicity, Christine Maw, who does a lot of social media.
I know Chris, yeah.
Okay, she sent it out. Our vice president found a number of, I don't know how much traffic we got from them, but our vice president found a number of murder mystery clubs, if you will, virtual clubs, and sent it to those clubs. Mm-hmm. The one thing we didn't get as much pop on that I would like is we didn't get much in the local press. And I'm not sure that anybody picked it up anywhere in the local press. I would like to have done that again. Mm-hmm. That's usually what I do, and I did send it out, but I didn't follow up as much as I should have. I was expecting at least somebody to say, "Oh, that's kind of different. We might like to do a story on that." We didn't get that pop.
We've had really good luck getting local print coverage, local media coverage for virtual events because nobody's doing in-person events, and we were quick to make the transition to virtual, so we got there first. And they were just so grateful to have content, right, for a newspaper or magazine. Yes, by all means, we'll run that. I mean, that's less true now because so many other people are doing it, and it's not the novel thing that it was in April and May. But we had really good results out of the gate, getting traditional media coverage for virtual events, which was wonderful. We also found, and maybe Marlena is finding this too, using Eventbrite. Eventbrite, and kind of in the same way that Amazon will say, hey, I saw you buy this thing, maybe you'll like this other thing over here. Eventbrite does that too. So we've picked up a lot of new people for our writers' workshops who have not otherwise affiliated with the Conroy Center because they attended somebody else's writers' event on Eventbrite, a month ago or a year ago, whenever it was. And now we code all of our workshops on Eventbrite in a way that makes it pop up as something that's recommended for them. So we got to a bunch of new people that we never would have found our way to otherwise, just by virtue of using Eventbrite.
Eventbrite's been very, very handy. That's the program we plan on using, or we are going to use, for the virtual Friends of South Carolina Libraries conference on Friday, November 6th. So if those of you who have not heard, I'll be happy to share that we're holding a virtual conference on Friday, November 6th for the Friends of South Carolina Libraries. This is the conference that was had to get rescheduled from April. We're going to hold it in virtual format. Registration opens tomorrow, and everybody that I am looking at here will be receiving some information either by email or in the mail. So we're definitely hoping to try to get that out to as many friends groups as possible, because our vision is similar to yours, Grant, where it's $10 to register, but we are quite comfortable and we would enjoy small friends groups getting together to discuss and have, little mini meetings, but of course socially distanced and how people are comfortable. But no need, if you have 3 people that want to attend from your board, to buy 3 different registrations. One will be sufficient. So. But yeah, the Eventbrite cross-promoting is very interesting, because if I go to one event or I like a certain organization, it's funny how different things start to pop up. So the Friends of Lexington Main Library, the organization that I represent, is trying to figure out what to do with our big fundraiser. We have an annual father-daughter dance every year. Most of you are probably familiar with it. And we were lucky enough to be able to hold ours in 2020. It was the last big event that we did in 2020. And we're trying to figure out what to do for 2021. So we decided to do a poll, a survey, and we sent it out to attendees from the last 3 dances, 18, 19, and 20. And the questions were fairly simple. If the friends are permitted, because we wanted to make sure that we used the correct verbiage. We might not be able to have this dance because the governor's order is still 250 people. And most people are pretty confident that is going to get lifted. I looked through the paperwork. There's a 9-page document on the state website about holding a recreational event outdoors and whether or not you can get that 250 people limit lifted. I'm not a lawyer. I'm afraid to even read too much into it. I might be signing away one of my children. I don't know. It's a lot of terms that are pretty vague. But so anyway, so we're trying to figure out what to do. So the 3 questions were, if the friends are permitted to have an in-person indoor dance in February, would you be comfortable attending? That was question number 1. We don't even know if we can do that. Where we held it was at Lexington High School, and they are currently not accepting reservations for any of their facilities. They're basically telling you, you can call on a month-to-month basis, and they will tell you, okay, October 1st, are you renting in October? No, we are not, move on. You can call us next month. So we can't plan ahead for that, excuse me. The second question was, if the friends are permitted, would you be interested in attending a father-daughter dance at an outdoor venue in April? And our idea there was the amphitheater in downtown Lexington, who gave us permission to hold the event. Even better, they're going to give it to us for free. It's a fantastic venue. It's having some construction done on it right now, which is going to expand it. It should be done by April. It actually should be done by December, which makes me feel comfortable that it'll actually be done in April. But so that would be an outdoor event in April. Again, that 250 person limit is still in place, but hopefully by April that would be lifted. And then the last question is, if we are not able to hold an in-person dance, would you be interested in attending a virtual event? So for the first question, we had a 65-35 response. 65% of the people would be comfortable attending an in-person dance in February indoors. I'm a little surprised about that. That's a 1,200 person event. That's a lot of people. I don't know that people are quite familiar with how, I don't think people understand when they, even when they come, that there's 1,200 people in the room. But the other thing to consider is that our volunteers are, by their own admission, some in high-risk categories, just simply due to age. And then our junior volunteers, which we use 90 junior volunteers to put this on, both for setup and the actual dance. They're all National Honor Society members, and they have not yet approved volunteering in the community yet. So without those 90 kids, and some of them double dip, some of them work 2 shifts, but still, without those 90 kids, it's a done deal. Now, the outdoor event in April, that got a very positive response. That was a 95% yes, they would be comfortable attending an outdoor event in April. So that's looking like a very real possibility right now. I know we like to hold it around Valentine's Day, but nothing is set in stone. I mean, 2020 proved that. But lastly, and we weren't really surprised by this response, but, you know, we thought maybe there might be a little bit more positive response, but there was an 87% they would not attend a virtual dance. So 13% would be interested in a virtual dance. Now, again, we didn't have a lot of opportunity to say, well, we would make it cool and we would have, you know, music and we, you know, like you could join the link and it would, you know, there would be a kit that you would pick up and it would have cool stuff inside. It just, for that audience, I don't think they're having it. So that, you know, very well could mean we are not going to hold the father-daughter dance in 2021. Because in order to hold the dance at the standard that we like to, in order to make money, we have to have at least 450 people. And even at, I mean, that's just a lot of people in today's environment. So, so conversation to be continued among my friends board. We will continue to do research and study, and I'm glad we asked the questions. We got a very high response rate. So because some people attend the dance multiple times, the 3 years actually yielded 850 individual email addresses. So we had 850 individual email addresses that it went out to. We got 305 responses, which is really high response rate for a participation survey where someone has to go out of their way to participate. You're not just walking up to them on the street and asking them a question. So, and that is what I learned in statistics this summer. Anyway, so, you know, to be announced. I wish I had some grand announcement that the father-daughter dance is going virtual and it's going to be awesome. The community doesn't seem to want it. So.
Well, I think I can understand that. I don't know how a virtual dance would work. I think, I will say that I was very pleasantly surprised, and it may be you do something, you don't know how it's going to come off. As you know, Marlene, we asked a question at the end of our performance about whether you would come back and, you know, attend another virtual murder mystery performance, and between the two top categories, absolutely and very likely, we got 85% plus positive response both evenings, and we got no negative response the second evening at all. So people liked it, so they'll come back, and hopefully if we do it again, that word of mouth will spread. But I can kind of see the virtual father-daughter dance thing. I don't know how you would work there.
Yeah.
Marlena, you're going to have to remind me to do this because I guarantee I will forget it. But I'd like to put you in touch with Jen McEwen, who is the Director of Arts and Cultural Affairs on Hilton Head Island, because she had a very similar situation with a key event of the Crescendo Arts Festival. You know, one of the most adored, most family-friendly parts of that is a paper lantern parade, which you would immediately think there's no way you can do that virtually. But she's doing it virtually with kits, you know, with this fairly elaborate plan. I have no idea what the response rate is. I've been really impressed with every single thing I've seen her put out. So obviously it's been thought through, but I don't yet know what the response rate is. But that may be a good conversation for you to have about how and if to try and transition something that's really even hard to imagine as a virtual event into a virtual event with mean, we did it on such a small scale with our Camp Conroy, with our summer camp, right? But it meant mailing kits out at the last minute when we realized this was going to be the only way to do it. Mailing them, to 5 states, 3 time zones, trying to figure out the logistics of that a week beforehand. But it can be done. I've seen it done well.
And that's it. We're just going to keep figuring this out and, having our adventures in virtual programming and playing around and trying things and seeing what works and learning from our mistakes, certainly.
Yep.
Donna, does the State Library have any plans to do, I know the State Library has such a full calendar of events for library employees, for the community, author events. I've been to a lot of different programs there. I went to a fantastic program at the State Library where they did conversational sign language for staff members. That was a phenomenal program. That might be something that they could do virtually. Is there anything in the works over there about virtual programming through the State Library?
All the events right now are virtual.
Oh, they are? Okay.
No, there's nothing in person. I mean, we're not back in the building because we work for the state. We work under a travel ban.
Right.
So everything is virtual.
What types of programs are they working on right now?
They just every year they have the notable state documents, and they just did that one last week. So a lot of what we did in the past is on hold right now. So everything's in transition.
I think that might be another great motto for 2020. Everything is in transition. I do like "you're on mute." I think the official quote of 2020 is "you're on mute."
Yes.
But everything is in transition, or everything is fluid. If I hear the word fluid one more time, it's fluid. It's just that information it's a very fluid thing.
Well, I don't think it happened in the performance you watched, but mute and unmute, it was very tricky when you do virtual programming. We had some of our actors, and I don't think they did it Saturday, but one of our actors another actor would be trying to speak, and that actor would be on mute, and the other actor would say, "Speak up, man, I can't hear you." So you get a verbal trigger for something unmute.
Rather than say, "You're on mute."
Yeah, rather say you're on mute. They made it part of the play, and it works.
It's really funny, actually. That's fantastic. Well, wonderful. Does anybody else have anything that they wanted to add about virtual programming and hosting events like this? So Grant, you said you made about $1,000. I like the way you put it. It's $1,000 more than you had before.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, our attendance was not what I really wanted it to be, but I'll take it.
I think that's a really good point too. I mean, it's much easier to do a virtual event than it is to monetize a virtual event. That's the challenge that we're all facing, not just in the library community, but beyond that as well. People will happily show up because there's fewer things, competing. It's a cool thing to do, and it's either no cost or low cost, but turning it into something that makes the equivalent amount of money of what you would otherwise be doing is, a seemingly impossible task right now.
That's a great point. And one of the points that we made, that we talked about when we started into the idea of doing a virtual one is, yes, we'd like to make money, but more than anything, we wanted to keep the pot boiling. We wanted to keep this event in some fashion going so that people who have been to the stage performances last year won't forget it when it rolls around and we have another stage event next year, maybe, or late next year. They'll say, "Oh, the virtual one was great. I remember it's good. I want to keep doing it. I want to keep doing it."
That's a
Just
great
keep the pot boiling.
Just like your Camp Conroy, Jonathan, you don't want it to, you hate to skip a year because you are worried about that whole, keeping the retention.
Absolutely. I mean, to Grant's point, keeping the community engagement, even if it's not the same financial return, is ideal, because when the time comes around that folks have money and feel safe participating in in-person events, you want to be foremost in their mind. You want them to have had a good experience, even if it's not the equivalent experience with what you've been doing in the meantime. I've seen a handful of annual literary festivals, book festivals, just say, "Nope, not doing it this year," including the Savannah Book Festival, right? I mean, 10,000 people go to the Savannah Book Festival. I can't imagine just saying, no, we're not going to do anything. You know, even if what you're doing feels smaller and you're not getting the same kind of engagement, you're creating good content, you're putting it out there. Ideally, you're recording it, as we are doing right now, and giving it multiple lives and multiple formats so people can discover it over time. So you don't approach these things with the same metrics. You're not trying to have 200 people in a virtual room at one time. That may not be possible. But if you get 50 people to attend, and over the course of posting it on social media and YouTube, you get, you know, more than 150 people, so more than 200 total over whatever you think is a reasonable amount of time. That's pretty good. There's nothing wrong with that, I would say. We did a virtual tour that, you know, about 100 people attended, whatever Zoom's max was. And then I posted that on YouTube with a link to make a donation. It's not a requirement. It's a pay if you can tour, just like it is in person here. And that was viewed, what, 700 times in 2 weeks on the basis of very little promotion at all. So it can be done. I would never have 700 people in the center at one time. So, I mean, that's awesome.
That would be illegal right now.
That would be, yes.
That would be a problem.
Yeah.
You would make the news for sure in Beaufort.
That would get coverage.
COVID-19 hotspot. Well, I do appreciate everybody joining us today for a little discussion and a little laughter about holding virtual programs. Fossil is excited, maybe a little nervous, but more excited about hosting our first annual conference virtually on Friday, November 6th. Same thing, it's going to be very nominal cost, and we're going to have some great presenters, programs. The one thing that we are doing for this virtual conference that I think maybe will hopefully ground people to it a little bit more is mailing out a conference package. So for every one registration, you will get one conference package. So in that conference package, it's going to include all the good swag that we would have given every attendee at the conference. Library bags from the Beaufort Library System, all kinds of good stuff from the Pat Conroy Center. There's great swag from the State Library. And, you know, sometimes it's little things. It's pens and notepads and all kinds of fun stuff in there. The Friends of Lexington, Maine are contributing adorable little mini bottles of hand sanitizer with our logo on them because relevant nowadays. So anyways, and included also will be program material for the day on November 6th, handouts from the different speakers that they're going to give us in advance so people can follow along with the program. So we're hoping that will help ground it a little bit. So the nominal cost that we are asking per registration is going to go to help the mailing of that. So I hope everybody here would be able to join us on November 6th. And if not, please share it with your local friends groups, with your board members as well and your staff. That would be fantastic. If anybody's not doing anything, I think I'm going to put those bags together on October 23rd. We haven't picked a location yet, but we're going to stuff those bags. I'm thinking Libby's backyard's looking real good to me right about now. You're on mute, Libby.
That will be fine. My backyard's always available. Front yard too.
There we go. Well, I really appreciate it.
And garage. I mean, we just opened the whole thing.
I had a girls' night in a garage a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to lie. We threw some box fans out there. Somebody had a folding table, and we socially distanced, and we had girls' night in a garage. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got to do, you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
Yes.
It's better than nothing.
Absolutely. Make do.
Make do. Oh, there's a good 2020 quote. Just make do.
Keep it fluid and make do.
Say it again.
Keep it fluid and make do.
Oh, good.
And you're on mute.
And you're on mute.
By the way. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I think this information is very useful, and I can't wait to get it out on the different social media channels for Fossil on our website and send it out through our newsletter. So thank you.
Grant, very interesting. Appreciate everything you shared with us. It was very interesting. Thank you.
Well, one thing I didn't share, and Marlena's last comments reminded me, we also sent every registrant a day or so before their performance a virtual playbill, a digital playbill, so that you got a playbill and you knew who the actors were, you knew what the story was. It had suggested questions for you to ask the cast during the audience participation thing, and that's a key thing when you do virtual theaters, to do a virtual playbill that people have, just like when you go to the theater.
And there were sponsors on there as well. You were thanking sponsors.
There was one sponsor, yes. That was, we didn't get as much sponsorship as we wanted, but again, one's better than none.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.